everybody, and welcome
Awesome.
to the Empowering Industry Podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Matthews, and I am excited today. I have a friend of mine that I've known for a while that has really gotten to see me progress as well as our businesses, but I've got to watch her too. So that's been really, really fun. So without further delay, Susan Fant, just jump on here, introduce yourself, tell them what you're doing now.
Yeah, I will. So I am Susan Fant, and I knew Charlie through working with her. I was an instructor at the University of Alabama, and like we said, we both progressed. And now I am a founder of a company called eMarketing Director, and I create workbooks and help people take the stress out of business.
Yes. Everybody's engaged now. They're like, "Yes, I want less stress in my life. Let's go."
It's kind of an easy sell.
Um,
Like, yes, you do
Absolutely.
want less stress, and there are in fact ways to go about it.
Well, before we go there, and we will go there, let's hear a little bit about you. How did you get into this space? Let's go through your career because I know you and I met you at the University of Alabama. You were a professor at the time, but even before that, how did you go into marketing?
That's right. So I went into marketing because I love telling stories. That is my number one key thing, right? And so I've always been a storyteller and a writer at heart. And I just enjoyed being able to help other people tell their stories too. And so that's how I got involved in kind of professor life, right? I taught social media marketing. And when I met you, I was creating the digital social media specialization for their master's program there at the business school. And we really worked together on creating live experiences for students. So being able to work within a business and to see the various aspects of marketing and of social media in real time. So that was kind of the beginning of my career within this space, right? And so I started kind of professor life a little young, a little early, but it worked out, right, for the subject that I was teaching.
Well, that's what I
And
was gonna say, Susan. I was gonna say, y'all, I'm just blown away. This is, at least 10 or so years
yeah,
after I graduated. And I go back and there's a whole nother degree for social media. Like we didn't
right.
have that when I was in school.
That's
So I won't tell y'all when that is, but it wasn't that far, behind. But it was just astonishing to me that okay, social
right.
media, we saw this created, but now there's a degree for it.
That's right. And so we didn't have the degree when I was in school either. So, it's an interesting aspect of education, right? Like we can continue to build things out as people need them. My background is in business, marketing, and creative industries. So I had a master's degree at the time in creative industries from the University of St. Andrews, and it really focused on like arts, entertainment, and storytelling, right? So the same idea, just in a different medium.
Yeah, and so you've done that, you went through that program, you invited, many speakers to speak, because I think that that's part of, the engagement with the students, and we love that around here too. So you invited, me and several thought leaders
Right.
within our community to come to the university and talk to the students, but then you went on from that. So tell us about that next stage of your life as well.
Yeah, the next stage of my life was a doctorate degree. So I completed my doctorate at the University of Southern California, where I focused on stress and anxiety, and specifically how to lower the stress and anxiety for business people.
Yes, and that is what brings us to today.
Yeah.
Which I am really excited about, y'all, because I love social media. There's an energy around it, that when you are creating and connecting with people, it's a lot of fun and it's a great tool. But you can get burned out. You can lose
Yes.
that, and it's like, what do I do now? How do I get that back? And then
Right.
how to reduce some of that stress. So um, I'm curious. I didn't throw this question at you either,
Mhm.
but have you been through that? Have you seen that
Oh,
journey?
absolutely. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So, and I think it's a lot of people look at me and are like, social media marketing, this is the most stressful thing that happens to my business. And so like you're telling me I have to stress less about this now. Like what do I do? And so yeah, it is a little bit of a push, I think, but it's important, right? Because the whole idea here is that we have good stress that actually gets us to do the things we need to do, but then we have bad stress, and bad stress really creates a horrible cycle of anxiety where we're consistently thinking about something, but we're not doing something about it. And we try to approach it with a good stress is good, bad stress is bad. So let's minimize the bad stress when we're thinking about doing something like social media or marketing or running a business in general, right? Because running a business, especially small business, entrepreneurship, anything to that effect, a lot of times people are doing it by themselves or in a really small team and they're having to take it on themselves and there's nothing to really fall back on. So the idea that I had when I started creating this was I wanted to take my academic background, which is that research and neuroscience and all kinds of education on like how stress and anxiety really work, and then interventions on how we can get through the process, right? It's not getting over it, it's getting through it. And what we can do within the business world, what tools do we need to help us in that process? And that's where I came up with my new company.
Yes, and so I have this, I don't know if y'all can see it, but it's a stress less guide, and, I'm really excited about sharing that with my team, because social media continues to adapt and change. I'd love to hear a little bit about this from your perspective of just how that has changed
For
since you're
sure.
a professor.
That's right. So, I mean, it's completely different, right? So, 10 years ago, we were really looking at, well, how do I set up a Facebook page? What do we think about this? Like, how do I get a business to even embrace social media, take it on, and actually use it? Now we've hyper speed through and we're not AI, right? So, like, what do I do with AI? How do I utilize all of the different tools that I have? And how do I get unstuck? Right. So, I think that the social media world is a place where you can be afraid to fail, and rightfully so, right? It gives a lot of people a megaphone for good, bad, or ugly, and it allows you the opportunity to not do well and not promote your business well unless you really sit down and you have a strategy for it, unless you're really plotting this out. And kind of like we talked the other day, the book goes in and it's not about being perfect. It's about done is better than perfect. But at the same time, it allows you to have some backup for yourself to know, am I on point? Do I have a strategy? If I don't have a strategy, what strategy can I make to make this happen for me?
Yeah, and I think the other thing is if you're sitting here thinking that, okay, I'm not gonna have to do social media anymore, it's not the case.
Yeah,
It's
it's not the case.
No, you are still going to have to put yourself out there. This is the world that we live in today. So
Yep,
strategy, 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 and tools. And so that's what Susan has created for us, a tool for that. But it goes beyond social media. We are living in a very stressful world. And I think that we can see that on social a lot.
for sure.
Yeah, clear right in our face, all over the place, and even these cameras, they've gotten so great that you're like, "Can you just go back a couple notches and so you don't see everything on my face?" That would be great.
Right.
But instead we created filters. But, there's so much of that, right? That there are, that creates this stress and figuring out, what does this mean for our children? What does this mean for us professionally? What does this mean for us as marketers? And I know that a lot of marketers are in our space trying to navigate this. So advice on how to manage this stress in our digital world.
Yes, absolutely. So, I think it really rolls back into making an organization like plan for yourself. And whether that is tackling this in terms of being a professional marketer, going into it on behalf of a company, or even for yourself and your children and your family, right? And so I think there's nothing haphazard about social media because of the way that it's expanded so much. You really have the opportunity to connect and interact with the whole world. And that's amazing. Like, that is so cool. The fact that we can even have this conversation right now, right? Like across the state and be able to talk with each other. That's great and awesome, and we're going to be able to post and go and do, but it's got to have a plan behind it, right? And so that's the number one thing that I tell people, and that's why I created the stress less guides. So it's a series of workbooks. It'll also be a online course as well as some coaching too, but it's really the idea that if you have a plan for success, you have more of a chance of being successful. And maybe that's like very obvious, but so many times, how many times have you just grabbed your phone and just gone, I'll just take this picture really quick and just throw it out there and it's fine. And I don't, whatever. And that's fine if you're just doing this for like a personal, fun. It's not necessarily fine if you're doing this for a business to be able to push on a return on investment because
Yeah,
you really want to be able to have things point to like, yes, this is actually working or not. And if it's not working, what can I go find that is?
Yeah, and I have an example recently. I was at a plant and I took this picture, and I asked first for permission and approval for this picture
Right.
because I knew it was just so good. Okay, and then I didn't post it right away because I wanted to be
Mhm.
intentional. I wanted to, make sure that I had the right people to tag. The message was clear, that I knew what the intention or what I wanted people to do afterwards, right? And sometimes you just get so excited you want to share it right there,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have the impact that you're trying to make, right, with that return on investment. If you're not using all the
Right.
tools that we have, um, to really maximize that effort, because we want to work smarter, not harder here.
Yes.
Anybody told me about SMART goals, it was definitely Susan, Fant, and I said your name wrong earlier. I apologize for that. I want to say, just focusing on this one thing about having a plan.
Mhm.
We have this in business all the time, right? Like, start with
Right.
your strategic plan. What does that look like? And I think that at the beginning of this workbook, even, right, you have to sit and think a little bit and get
Mhm.
before you know all the answers to this workbook. How do you,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, how do you expect people to kind of start? What would be, how do
Well,
they start?
exactly. So I think that the best way to do it, and kind of the point of you have to have a plan. Everybody goes, I've got to have a plan. I've got to have these SMART goals. I got to go, 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 go. And the stress loss guide is not necessarily about the hustle culture. Like I am not a like hustle, grind, get it out kind of person, because I just think that that's not something sustainable, right? In like the world of burnout, you can't be. Right. And so that is a big part of it. But again, that is kind of contradictory to what you see on social media, like what you see, right? So like there's a little bit of a step back process where you really have to reflect on what do you want right now within the short term? What do you want in the middle term? What do you want in the long term? And when you're going to fill out this workbook, I think being able to reflect back on your business, have conversations with your employees, with people who know you, your stakeholders, or even sitting down and really looking at, who are my customers and am I selling to them? Are they interacting with me? Do I want, different types of people who are here with me in this community I'm building is a much safer and healthier approach to social media. So, I can go buy 1,000 followers right now, like on my phone right now, like within this second, I could go do it. That doesn't help me if they aren't going to engage with my business and eventually be a customer. Right. And so I think that there's a huge push on metrics, metrics, metrics. But if you're not getting the engagement, then the metrics don't matter.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And it's really, I thought sometimes I'm like, can I go back and like reorganize from the start? We've been doing this a
Mhm.
decade, y'all. And so, can we restart our programs? And I've done it in the past, taken an audit and went through and like, okay, I didn't need to follow all of these people or whatever, right? And so figuring out what that is for you as a business and what that looks like. And it will reduce stress. If you just sit and think about what are you trying to accomplish, then some of those things that
Yeah.
we stress about will just disappear. Um,
Well, yeah, you
okay.
can put them into perspective, right? You can put them into context, and that's how they disappear. It's like it's not so scary anymore. Like once you label it, once you see it. I think that the problem with like, oh, I have to have a strategic plan. How many times do you write that strategic plan down? Like in reality, right? I may have it in the back of my head, especially if I'm a small business owner or an entrepreneur, but I haven't necessarily written it down and committed to it. And so I really wanted to create a space for people to write this down and come back to it, right? And have a different iteration of each time they want to come back so that they can see their own growth too.
I also really love the checklists for
Yeah.
marketers. They absolutely love checking things off. That personality, that technical side of marketing. Let's just knock it out. So what advice would you give a marketer? And you do you consider yourself a marketer? One question. But then what type of advice would you give kind of that marketing graduate that's coming out of school?
I do consider myself a marketer. I'm a little bit of a reluctant marketer, which I think people go, "Whoa, like you talk about social media, you build this stuff up. Like, are you not there all the time?" No, I'm not. I don't necessarily want to do TikTok dances. I don't want to always be taking selfies. I don't want to always live my life online. But at the same time, I think everybody has to be a marketer in some capacity, right? I think everybody has to try to market themselves, whether it's within their business, within their industry, and promote the things they care about. And this is what this is about. It's about being able to give context to what you're doing, taking the stress into account, labeling it out, going, now what are the tools I have to pull this stress down so that I can get back to doing what I love to do. For me, I love to write books. Like that's my thing, right? So after professor life, I still love to teach, but I recognize that I really love to write, and I really love to write in like long form. And so I've got 2 textbooks that are coming out with, yeah, I know, extra stuff to do, right? But I had 2 textbooks that are coming out with a big publisher that I really love writing, and I get into the flow, right? And I think that that's really important to recognize, whoever you are and whatever your role is, where is the flow? For me, I could write and publish a book at like 1 a.m. Not the healthiest thing to do, don't suggest it, but I could and be very happy doing it. And so I think that there's an opportunity then to take what you're happy doing, put it out into the world, find your people, find your community using tools like this one. And
Yeah.
I think that there was another part of that question too. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but pause there because I feel like that flow and finding the flow. You
Mm,
cannot find any flow if you are in constant stress mode, going all over the place, trying to post, do these things. No, if you set
that's
aside
right.
time to really focus on what is the things that I want to accomplish in marketing, let's write them down. Let's make a plan. Let's check it off. Like this is my
Hmm.
marketing time, if you will. Therefore,
Right.
it's set aside so that you're not giving up some other piece of your time that you want, right? Whether that's personal time, adventure time,
Yes.
yeah, work time, there's
That's
other
right.
things. Yeah, I was just saying there's
Yeah,
other
that's
things
right. And
in
I think social
marketing.
media takes, it'll take that from you too. Like social media will take your time if you let it.
Oh, absolutely, especially in discovery and
It will
like,
take it. So, I think that's a huge part. Oh
okay,
man.
wonderful.
Like,
So the other part of my
I think
question,
everybody likes to scroll, you know?
oh yeah, for sure, for sure. But
Mhm.
my okay. So the other part of my question is that advice for a young marketer coming out of school was the other.
Right. Coming right out of school. I would say, well, I've got a lot of advice, but I would say the number one thing is to find a really good people to work with, and find really good people that hold your values. Because I think coming out of school, the impulse is to just take every and any job possible, right? Just boom. And like, yes, money is good, going to work is good, but finding people who can help you bring on the same values that you have, especially within marketing, is key to me. Because marketing, you've got ethical values you have to think of. If you're in the process of creating something that's going to track someone all the way through their journey, and you're not comfortable with that, you're not going to do well with a group of people who are consistently doing that, right? So, it's figuring out what your values are as a marketer, and then finding other people who hold those values that allow you to then go and test and do and get a sense of what you want to accomplish next. I think it's huge to stay part and like relevant to the trends, but it's not the only thing, because all of these social media networks work in the same way. They're actually based on like 1970s communication theory of how we literally use network theory to connect with others. So every one of them is going to work the same way. What's really important is understanding how they work, and then understanding where you fit your content into that.
I love that, love that, love that. Okay, well, I can't let you go without a little rapid fire, Susan.
Okay.
What is your favorite book?
My book.
Exactly, exactly. So y'all and look forward to more books from
That's
Susan.
right. I hope so. Yeah. It's I love so many different books. So like I said, I'm a writer at heart. But I really have enjoyed the world of textbooks. So I've been kind of sunk into textbooks. And one of the things I did, I work in business textbooks, but I started taking up reading history textbooks. And I think that that's been really fun for me. So I've enjoyed reading through the history of different parts of the world, and like thinking about how that impacts us in the future.
Oh, I love it. What about music?
Anything that Spotify plays. So I've taken full advantage of the Spotify AI, and I love Daylist. My best friend sent me a day list of hers that was all 90s rom-com music. And it was like the honest.
Okay, I'm looking that up for
Yeah, yeah.
sure
I
because
can
I
I will
love
send it to
Spotify.
you so that you can enjoy.
Okay, so big question. What is the
Alright.
best advice you've ever received?
The best advice, man, I think the best advice I've ever received is it's really hard actually. I'm trying to like pause it out to think about it. I think it's really to think through and find your people, right? Find your people. And I kind of gave the same advice. So I think, you kind of give the advice that you like a lot. But I think that the biggest opportunities I've had in my working world and my working life as a marketer and otherwise has been to go in search of people who have the same values as you do, who have similar goals that you do, and will help push you forward. There are so many people that are willing to pull you back and not enough that are willing to push you forward. So once you find those people that are push forwarders, you should stick with them. And then you have to go about pushing other people forward.
Okay, so I have a off script, if you will,
Okay.
rapid fire question. Um, what what's the biggest like challenge? And I know these are really
Yeah.
biggest, whatever, but what is that? I normally ask kind of advice you would give to somebody else, but
Sure.
there's been so much change and so much going on, right? And just even seeing
Mhm.
like somebody come up, what does that look like for them is almost daunting. But just like that challenge, the thing that you kind of see over and over again. What if you're just like in that and your hands are up? You're just like, I'm over it. Okay. I am stressed out. Or, how do you, what's the step for that? What is the advice for getting out of that? Like, I am
The
stressed. I
yeah,
want to talk about how stressed I am. First
the
step.
spiraling loop of like anxiety, right? I think the number one thing you need to do is to label it and say what it is, right? Things are less scary when you go through and label it and say, I am stressed, I am anxious, I am scared, whatever it is, right? Being able to point to it, label it, and go, this is how I feel when I am anxious. And can I take a step back? And being mindful to that is incredibly difficult. There are tools that help us build mindfulness, right? And so being able to write things down, labeling our feelings, working through meditations, those help, but you don't have to be a Jedi to be mindful, right? Like at all. All you have to do is really sit down and label what's going on and then go step back from it and go, okay, I am anxious or I am stressed out. Now, what am I going to do about it? Right. And pulling ourselves out of that, I think is really difficult. Like it's a jolt because we're so used to this cycle where like I go, oh, I'm really anxious. Let me drink more chai tea lattes and caffeine and let's not eat anything and like keep go. But that's not what you need to do. And it's more than just breathe, right? Like I really don't appreciate when people in kind of my research field of being able to say, oh, just breathe, you'll get over it, toughen up. Like that's not real, right? And so that's not a real thing. In order to have grit, you have to have something to pull against. You have to have literal traction, right? So being able to step back from those feelings, label them, say this is what I'm going to do to work through them, and then who is my support team? That grit, right? Who are the people that I can go to, that I can talk to, that I can come up with a solution alongside? That will help you. And even if it's as simple as putting a little post-it note up on your computer screen to say, label your feelings or stop anxiety, like anything that you have to stop yourself, I think it can be a really helpful tool. And it sounds simple, but I think when something sounds simple and looks easy, there's a lot to it, right? And there's a lot of practice that has to go into it.
I love that, Susan. You don't disappoint. So
Oh,
everybody breathe and it's a and you've got to do the and part as well. All right. Well, until next time, be empowering. Loved having you, Susan. Thank you.
thanks so much, Charlie.